Hello and welcome to the CBB Super Show, brought to you by the FTN Network. Of course, I am Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85. See behind me, the banner shows you what time it is. College basketball season, Christmas Eve for those of you who are just absolute connoisseur, lover, and eat, sleep, and drink basketball that is of the college variety, collegiate. We're out here. It's time. It's officially on the East Coast, November 4th, which means the day has come in college basketball DFS, college basketball prize picks, underdog, sleeper, betting opportunities, all of this stuff now that we really didn't have when we first started doing this back in 2012, 2013, when we had Draft Street and Stat Clash. But lots of opportunities here. Fun slate, 11 games that we're going to go through. If you're watching live, I do appreciate it. It's pretty late going out live at 10 o'clock. Appreciate that. You got to understand, we're still grinding the college football season. If you're new to FTN or the Super Show in general, you just know me as a college football guy. But most of you who have been with me over the years know my true love, my passion is my college basketball content. I love sweating these games out. Nothing better. I've done it for damn near a decade now. In fact, that's been over a decade, believe it or not. And we tend to go on live. Shows are going to be pretty consistent Monday night. So we'll be back tomorrow night as well, breaking down the Tuesday slate. But going forward, you can expect a Monday night CBB show, a Friday night CBB show, and then we'll still be doing the Thursday slate breakdown every Thursday for college football. And then Saturday morning, pulling double duty, the Q&A show, which I did miss this past Saturday. Apologies. Woke up with a outrageous migraine, which took me out, but we still got through it. We did our thing, posted in the Discord, and had ourselves a pretty fun little Saturday. But if you are watching live and on YouTube, please make sure you hit that like button. It helps so much with not only the algorithm, but just getting the show seen by more people. If you're watching on Twitter/X, make sure you hit repost on the @FTN Fantasy account. That is where it is streaming live right now. You have multiple options, and of course, it's on demand for those of you who have already told me, man, you go on so late, but it's been this way for a long time, dating back to Blog Talk Radio. On demand listening on YouTube and Twitter. Throw me in your ear while you're at work. Put your phone in your pocket or set it aside. Don't even need to watch me. Just need to listen to the sensual sound of my voice, and I will guide you through this college basketball season with those green screens and window trips. Now, I do want to say before we get into it, I'm going to miss him a lot, but Mike Kutry has decided to take his show on the road. He will be doing Dub Club independently now, so you'll no longer get his content here at FTN, but that doesn't mean you won't see his pretty face around. He will still be doing the betting show occasionally with Mike Randall, and then maybe you'll see him pop on a Super Show once and again to talk DFS with us. It's a rare occasion because he's out there in New Jersey, but I'm sure we'll get him on one way or another. So shout out to Mike. Hope he does extremely well. I'm getting some interactions here. My man Tubby with the RPS logo there. Did beat me out for a seat last year. That is right. Almost, how could I forget? I think he had a pretty sick lineup that day. Mania, whatever they want to call it. I'll continue to say it's Mania. Of course, we'll start seeing some qualifiers for that. I like the way they did it last year where they started it pretty early instead of jamming them all in 1 month, kind of spreading it out throughout the entire year. So hopefully they do that once again. But honestly, I'm just happy we have college basketball in general. looking at the DraftKings lobby with this 11-game slate, you have a season tip-off, $5K to first. And I know a lot of you probably not if you're watching this show, but a lot of people out there won't even get out of bed for 5K. Lots of complaints about that. I just, profit is profit is profit. I'll win $5,000. I don't mind. Some of the smaller single entry stuff like the $5, it's only 475 people, 106 entrants. It's small stuff. It's small stuff. But you know what? It all counts, adding to your bankroll. And I think that, I know we're going to have a lot of success as we transition without Mike Cutchery, not Mike Randall, that is. On the betting side, we did have a lot of success with our PRA props last year. We're definitely going to take DraftKings to school. I'm very confident in that. And then, of course, the other books. And then Prize Picks, which doesn't have a lot on it right yet. And Underdog, which has 2 props that are just absolutely can't miss. We'll talk about those before the end of the night. We're going to do some serious damage there as well. And Pick 6, which is a new rollout on DraftKings, which have been messing around with on the college football side. They will have that for college basketball as well. So we'll have some Pick 6 coverage, not tonight, but throughout the season as that gets popular. People have a want for it. And we have I am going to be playing it myself. If it's successful, we'll definitely share that content as well. And then, of course, Underdog, which will have, it looks like in the lobby, Battle Royale for college basketball. No best ball stuff, of course, but Battle Royale, a pretty fun one there where you do drafting for slates. Little bit high variance in the college football world, but for college basketball, I think that can have a lot of edge. So a lot of different offerings here, a lot of different opportunities to make money. Murray, Elon, thanks for showing us, man. They also have single stat for CBB. I did see that. I don't like that. I think it's a little bit of the least of like all the edges that you can have on DraftKings, FanDuel, betting, whatever. I think that's like one of the least you can have. That single stat stuff, because you're going to have overlap galore, and there's going to like the winner take alls for that. There's going to be ties. So basically DraftKings loves it because they're just going to be raking to death. I would not recommend playing too much single stat stuff myself. That does not look too promising. If they had some larger GBPs, which they might, I didn't look since 2 days ago at it, but that doesn't seem like it's going to be all that great for single stat stuff. I know pro sports it might be, but the overlap for CBB is going to be a little bit heinous, whereas you can just play DFS, and I think there's going to be a lot less overlap. Speaking of which, the chalk in football the last 2 weeks, I absolutely hate it. We'll have some opportunities here with college basketball to get back to business with our posh play of the day, which of course is my version of a sneak, which we may have to start the season off right by giving you one of those. All right, that is everything that I have to say for the intro. Let's get into this glorious 11-game slate. And there's a ton of games and betting opportunity stuff as well. If you're a part of FTN and the Discord, you'll be able to get on the betting side, the CBB room there. Myself, Mike, and Gus Kierns, who is new to the team this year, will be posting our betting stuff there, and as well as the tracker. You want to rely on the tracker on FTN. That's where all the most up-to-date picks that we put in will be. And of course, the CBB DFS room, which is a place of legends and tilting that you will not see anywhere else. I'm pretty confident in that. All right, let's do it. So first game we're going to start out with here is Kentucky versus Wright State. And since we don't have stats to really go off of, I've got some exhibition stuff that I'm going to talk about, which obviously, we need to take that with a grain of salt to a degree. There's some injury stuff we're going to talk about. And basically, I'm going to go about this kind of giving you what I believe the projected starting lineups will be for these teams. And then we'll go through pricing and see if there's anything that sticks out, any values, any guys in the mid-range that are going to go overlooked, who we should pay for, all of that. So that's kind of how this one is going to go, a little bit differently than maybe what we normally do here once we reference Ken Palm and Evan Maya and some of the other data stuff. Also, I did wait like a month into the season last year to offer projections because I wanted to fine tune things and make sure it was all good to go. We are going to offer projections on day one. So that means tomorrow, slate / today, depending on where you are, we will have those projections. I do want to say, and I've already told the Discord this, you want to take them with a grain of salt. It offers you a starting point when combined with the analysis and the info that you get from myself and Mike Randall. Using those in combination with each other should make you competitive and really kind of give us a chance to see, what did they miss here? Why is this projecting this way? We did use some exhibition stats for some of the freshmen. Also, my own brain 4 minutes projections. So you'll have to bear with me. There's going to be some things that we have to go through and really take a few weeks to get that data. But we are going to be offering projections, and proud to say one of the few sites out there, reputable sites out there, that will be offering CBB projections before March Madness. So pat ourselves on the back. That I'm very excited. If you are kind of wondering where to go for CBB this year and you're just watching the show and checking me out for free, the projections were very good last year. We had a lot of GBP winners, and especially once we got past January. Typically November tends to be a situation where we just use our overall knowledge. We have a pretty good, that's what I like to say, my nut in November. People starting to catch up in December and January. Then we get past the conference play, and the month before March Madness begins, we tend to pick back up and have a really strong finish to the season. So November and February tend to be my best months, just so you guys are aware if you're checking me out for the first time. All right, Kentucky versus Wright State, total of 160.5, one of the highest totals on the slate. No surprise there. Kentucky is 19-point favorites. Wright State, start off with them. They won a recent exhibition by a score of 105-59. Now, again, we want to take these exhibitions with a grain of salt because some players didn't actually play any minutes due to injuries. They might not want to show everything they have. They're giving the bench minutes, trying to get guys minutes in a competitive setting. 12 players for Wright State played in that game. So you see that's not going to be the rotation. That's just how it worked out. Only 2 of them played over 2 minutes. So it's hard for me to sit here and say what the rotation is going to be. I also don't want to sit here and gaslight you into playing a whole bunch of Wright State players. There are going to be times where teams like this are on the slate and we can get them without much rostership and feel good about them. I'm not so sure this is going to be one of those situations. Right now, my projected starting lineup for them would be Logan Woods, Keaton Norris, Brandon Noel, who I do like to a degree, Alex Hubrexe, challenging me on that name, and Michael Imarajabe. Those are your starting 5 for Wright State. And if you wanted to have any exposure there, my lean would be Brandon Noel first. And then a little bit of Logan Woods, who does check in there at 3.8. But this is going to be a game in which Kentucky is able to style. Now, Wright State in the past has been a very good team. Long gone are the days of Ludin Love. Name for you might not have heard of, but look back, he was a stud. This Kentucky team is very deep, and I suspect that we'll get a chance to see majority of their rotation play pretty solid minutes. Because of the fact that it's likely going to be a blowout, even though Wright State is typically a pretty competitive team, we shouldn't expect to see more than 25 to 28 minutes from most of those starters. The starters from the 2 exhibition games that Kentucky had, and they had many secret scrimmages as too, but the 2 exhibitions that I can actually pull data from: Otega Awe, Lamont Butler, Jackson Robinson, who we love, Andrew Carr, and Amari Williams. Now, Amari Williams is technically day-to-day with a leg injury, so his status could be up in the air. I think he will play, but that's going to be a situation where they won't need to press him very much. And then the rotation, which is going to be deep, we can typically see on a game-to-game basis, going to be the 3-point sniper Kobe Brea, the technically freshman, but had the 2-year mission when he was at BYU, Colin Chandler. So he's an older freshman, but he's going to be a good one. Ansley Almanar, Brandon Garrison, all of those guys I expect to contribute. In the exhibition, the best player by far from a scoring standpoint was Jackson Robinson. He scored 24 and 19 points in those exhibitions. He, of course, came over from BYU. This is his last year. Looking at it, the price of Jackson Robinson is only $5.8K. We don't need him to play a whole bunch of minutes to pay off. Last year, he did it for us a lot, granted in a different setting, in a different program with BYU. But the nice thing is he's with his coach, with Coach Pope. So we're going to expect a similar system. And the way that Jackson was used last year, he's going to be used this way for them. And he has the absolute green light. You saw late in the season last year, he was taking 12, 15, 18, 20 shots quite frequently. So I expect him to take a ton. I don't know how many peripherals he's actually going to give us because he's not going to be much for rebounding. He might luck into an assist or two, and he'll give us some steals, but we're mainly looking at him from a scoring standpoint. I'm thankful DK didn't do something stupid and price him at 3.5 where everybody would have him, but the 5.8 price point is at least going to make it to where a lot of people look and say, yeah, this guy can score, but doesn't give me much else. I'm going to look elsewhere. But at that 5.8 price point, he could very well score 25 real points in this game and pay off like that. So he's a pretty safe option in my mind. He might not be the best for the large field GPP if you're going that route, but definitely is the player that I feel is going to be the most successful in this Kentucky team from a game-to-game basis. They also have Kerr Kriisa there. Notice I didn't list him in the rotation. He'll certainly be there. Didn't play a whole bunch in the exhibition, is dealing with a hamstring issue. I'm just not a big Kerr Kriisa guy. I don't know that this team is going to offer him a ton of minutes, and I could certainly be very wrong about that by the time it's all said and done, but I think he's going to get lost in the shuffle a little bit and be relegated more to a bench scoring piece and secondary type of option. He is priced down there at 3.8, but again, not healthy. We'll see what happens there. If you want to go real cheap and sneaky in alt builds, Ansley Almanar was a pretty good scorer and overall peripheral guy. And then Colin Chandler, who I really like at the 3-1 price because I do think he sees some elevated minutes here. They really believe in him. The way he played in the exhibition, he was pretty strong, contributed in all categories, looked comfortable, and just the fact that he's an older freshman, it's going to be a little less of a shock to his system playing at this level, and he is only at 3-1. We have several other players below 6K that I think are going to be relatively popular but good plays. So somebody like Chandler, who doesn't project to get much ownership at all, is kind of a sneakier look there for us. Okay. I don't know what that means, but yeah. Kobe Bray is there at 4.8 as well. So there's some interesting looks here. I worry about this Kentucky team. New coach, new faces, but it's still the same thing every year. Deep rotation. I know one thing, not going to be playing Amari Williams at 7.3 there. Probably not even looking to Owie or Butler in those mid 5K range prices, mostly just Jackson Robinson. And if I want to get cute with Chandler, but we'll see. A lot of this is going to be glued to Stat Broadcast, looking at starting lineups as well. And if you don't use Stat Broadcast, I would highly recommend you do so. Statbroadcast.com. Media box scores for most things. If they don't have it, you can go to Sidearm Sports, which will have box scores for the smaller schools or Mountain West teams that aren't on Stat Broadcast. They usually post the starters beforehand. You get them on social media as well, but that is like the tried and true method. Password lock games are no problem. We have a password for that. So if you ever find yourself in a predicament and you're not a part of the FTN community and you need to get into it and you're a listener or watcher of the show, you can hit me up and I will give you that password. I will not put it on the air, but I will give it to you privately. All right, moving on. We have Texas A&M versus UCF, and this is going to be a fun one. Total of 145. The Aggies are a 4.5 point favorite. Now UCF, Johnny Dawkins is on the hot seat for sure. And it kind of the him and his staff just decided if, we're going to get fired, we might as well just go all in and grab all the talent we can from the transfer portal, regardless of how checkered their past might be. They went out and got several players who coming out of high school were very heralded, high caliber, and it just hasn't worked out, whether it's some off the court stuff, some social media stuff, some on the court stuff. But they've got a really intriguing group. Mike Randall, one of our chief content officers here, he loves UCF. He thinks if they can put it all together, this could be a tournament team that wins a couple of games. And certainly they have the talent to do so. But do we believe Dawkins will have the patience and the ability to rein this team in? There's already a rumor that a player had an incident with a staffer and punched him all just a few days ago. We haven't even gotten to the beginning of the season and somebody's already getting into a fight. Pretty tough. UCF did have an exhibition game against a Georgia team that I love. I cannot wait for you guys to see Georgia in action. I am all about Georgia this year. Georgia crazy. I am hugely going to be stacking that team in DFS and supporting them a lot. Big fan of this program. Anyways, we'll talk about them another day when they're actually on the slate. They played Georgia in an exhibition game, 114-76. They got absolutely obliterated. Again, exhibition, grain of salt, whatever, but that's still a pretty big yikes to get their doors blown off like that. Jordan Ivy Curry scored 21 points, but everybody else was fairly ordinary. Darius Johnson had a horrible outing. Benny Williams wasn't particularly good, although he did play almost 30 minutes. And overall, the team looked out of sorts, and that's to be expected. It's going to take time for this thing to work if it's going to work because they got a lot of different personalities, A lot of different ball dominant players coming together. Darius Johnson back. That's great. We know how good he can be. He's a definite slate breaker, and he is a type of player that can basically be considered matchup proof. He has done it against a variety of opponents. Jalen Sellers is also back. He did miss that exhibition against Georgia. We'll see. He's got the official questionable tag there if he ends up playing with the starting lineups. But they have a myriad of transfers that have come in. Dior Johnson, formerly the highly rated recruit that was headed to Oregon, then Pittsburgh, had some off the court stuff. He was at the JUCO level last year where he was basically dropping 30 plus on everyone. JUCO, D1, I get it, but still giving guys 30 a game is pretty impressive at any level. Also, Mikey Williams is coming in there. I'm not too keen on him. If I had to guess if what player was the one that punched the staffer, my money would be on Mikey Williams. Take that for what it's worth. I don't know if that will lead to anything or if it even happened. Jordan Ivy Curry, who spent a lot of time at UTSA. Motiam, Benny Williams, who's at Syracuse the last couple of years, Keyshawn Hall, who had success in the A10. So a variety of different type of players here. Darius Johnson at 8'6", that's a bit excessive. I don't think we can get there. Keyshawn Hall at 7'5", Sellers at 7'3". Like, all of those prices are a bit too high. If we're going to go with any UCF guys, the one we can definitely look to, and I believe we'll have the green light and high usage, will be Jordan Ivy Curry, priced there at 4.2. People will see the kind of stats he put up last year, so that won't be a sneaky play. I think people will just naturally look and mindlessly plug him in. If he's not starting, that's a little bit tougher for me, but as a starter, I can definitely get behind there. The Aggies are going to be hell on wheels this year once again, but there is going to be an ability for teams like UCF to score points on them. I would love to tell you to use Dior Johnson. He did not look good in the exhibition. Looked a bit shocked. All the athleticism of Georgia just kind of negated what he wanted to do. Basically near min price, but I couldn't tell you for sure how many minutes he's going to get. Texas A&M, Wade Taylor, a probable first team all conference player, possible conference player of the year. He is a big time high caliber player, 9.1K. There is enough value on this slate to make it work if you want to go there. Let me pull this up, the Aggies, they had an exhibition as well. They played Houston last Sunday. They did lose that exhibition 79-64, but it's important to note they were without Solo Washington, a guy I love, and SMU transfer Zurich Phelps. So that's two key cogs to the team that they were without, and kept it pretty competitive with a Houston team that we know is just honestly way, way good as usual. The starting five, when healthy, is likely going to look like this: Wade Taylor, Manny Obasake. We're going to say his name right this year since he's such a big player. We've been waiting for Manny O a long time, several years to get going. Did so at the end of last year, so he deserves the respect of his name being said properly by everyone associated in the DFS industry this year. Manny Obasake, he looked great in that exhibition, as did Wade Taylor. Solo Washington, Zurich Phelps, and Anderson Garcia. That's what I expect the starting lineup to be when healthy. Now, I don't know how available Phelps is going to be and Solo Washington. As of now, it sounds like both will play, but I mean, coming into it, day one, 11-game slate, lots of options. I don't really want to be messing around with guys with injury designations, and a new role for Zurich too. He comes from SMU where he was the high volume, high usage guy, the go-to. That's simply not going to be the case here in Texas A&M. He does have a chance to take the Boots Radford role, which is very viable, very valuable to us as DFS players. And I think he can, but it's going to take him some time to kind of figure out, like, hey, we need a bucket. Wade Taylor's going to go get that for us, not you. Off the bench, we're probably looking at a pretty tight core. Pharrell Payne, who would start if Solo can't, or maybe he starts over Anderson Garcia. We did see that sometimes last year with Garcia coming off the bench, Payne transferring over from Minnesota, certainly a capable five. Henry Coleman, who's fallen off hard, but still playing, still there, and Jace Carter. So I'm looking at an 8, maybe 9-man rotation for Texas A&M in a competitive game. This is why I would advise looking to pay for Wade Taylor. I think he's going to be relatively safe. Washington is a very cheap and appealing price at 5K, but I'm just not sure how good he's going to be just yet. And they did a good job of pricing, Manny O at 6K, because it makes it a decision for you. the exhibition's any indication, he picked right up where he left off last year. All right, let's move on to Maine versus Duke. A rough one, to be certain. Duke is favored heavily. What a surprise. 30-point favorites, total of 136. Now, in the past, there's been times we've been able to pluck out a cheap kind of like wing shooter against Duke, and they've done pretty well for us. But I don't feel great about Maine's chances here. Their size is going to be they're gonna have trouble with the Duke size. Kellen Tynes is Maine's top player, and he's priced as such, but he's undersized, about 6'2", 6'3". This is gonna be a really tough matchup for him against those bigger guards and wings to find any room. If Maine were to win this game, it would be a real Christmas miracle. I think it's probably going to be a situation where they just get bombed out by 40, and they'll be able to collapse and really kind of just pay attention to time. So not a lot for me on the Maine side here. And with Duke, we want to try to figure it out. These blowouts, they can be tricky early, and we get a lot of what I call non-con heroes built up. Because teams play these lower tier competition, you'll see a guy that maybe in conference play falls off, but he was just a non-con superstar and tricks people when conference play starts. So we want to watch out for those guys when that time comes, but we want to look to use them now because we know they're going to get elevated minutes than what they would in a competitive game and put up a pretty lofty, heavy score. So we want to try to identify those players early if we can. The fact of the matter is Cooper Flagg is going to be very hyped, maybe hyped not to a Zion Williamson level, but we probably haven't seen anything like this since Zion Williamson was in the collegiate ranks. Flagg and Duke are going to be all over ESPN as usual, but Flagg's going to be especially talked about. One and done prospect. Everybody's probably going to flock to him. Casual players who maybe want to dip their toe in the water in the CBB world are going to want to pay that near $10K. It's an expensive price. The first exhibition that we saw, Cooper Flagg looked amazing. The second one, blowout, didn't really need to do much. He played like 18, 19 minutes and had like 9 points, 4 rebounds. I worry a lot about this one because I think that if you pay that price, you're really going to need him to put up somewhere close to 20 to 25 by halftime. And he certainly can if he's as good as everybody says. But I don't know that I want to take that shot on day one, especially if he's going to be 20 or 30% owned at minimum, as I'm predicting. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to provide ownership projections like we do in college football. That's going to be really difficult to do here for the first week. We're going to have point projections, but we're not going to try to do ownership. We'll try our hand at that once we've had maybe a month under our belts. But I do feel like Flagg will see a bigger amount of ownership than he probably should when you consider the situation, but name value alone. The likely starting lineup for Duke would be Cooper Flagg, Caleb Foster, Tyrese Proctor, Kaman Mollywack, and Con Knipple. Now, everybody get that, Billy Madison scene out and laugh. Turn your reading is fun books to page 69. Con Knipple, get used to this Knipple family. He's got about 4 other brothers who all play. They're going to be the next Duke royalty. All of his little, he's got I think a 15-year-old brother that's probably better than him. But Knipple was an absolute beast. In the ASU game, it was a major blowout. I mean, Arizona State looked awful. No surprise there. Bobby Hurley's not Dan Hurley. I don't know if you guys knew that. But he put up a big number in the blowout, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. I have interest in him in the blowout because this is the player I've identified as a bit of a non-con hero. I think once they get into ACC play against some of the upper tier teams in their conference, he might get smacked in the face a little bit and they turn the keys to the car over to Cooper Flagg. But against lesser tier competition, I think Knipple is going to be a guy we want to have exposure to in a variety of ways. This is a matchup also, looking back to last year when North Carolina's, Armando Bacot and playing against some of these undersized teams, you like to have those front court players that are just going to feast on the glass. And Kaman looks like the guy that's going to absolutely ape when it comes to rebounding this year in general, but especially against a team like Maine. He did have 12 rebounds against ASU. ASU has a little bit of size in the front court. He is priced at just 6.1K. I certainly have a ton of interest in him there, taking a forward spot. Don't want to be too tempted to take Malik Brown. His role here, and he's at 6'5", is going to be different than Syracuse. Going to be more of a bench piece. Malowak gets into foul trouble. Mason Gillis is there. There's some other pieces, but I think at 6'1", he's a little bit of a sneakier look that people are going to miss. And then Con Knipple at 5.2K, guard forward eligibility, so you can move him around a little bit. He is the one that I think is going to be the best from a X value standpoint per price, is going to be the best Duke play of the day. And I don't think, and once he gets to be like 7K, 8K, when we start ACC play, then we're just going to be like, you know what? Non-con hero, be gone. But I like him now in this matchup. The rest of the rotation here, it's another deep one, right? We're going to see Sion James, who comes in from Tulane. He's going to get significant work. He's 4'6", interesting there. Of course, Mason Gillis, role player from Purdue, priced down there at 3.7. We already mentioned Malik Brown. So we're looking at 8-9 deep for the most part. Neil Begovic will get spot minutes in the front court. Cam Sheffield, who transferred in from Rice, he's got some upside, but I wouldn't expect to see a ton of minutes from him. Darren Harris got some minutes as a freshman. So probably an 8-man rotation at the end of the day, which makes Duke pretty appealing when the season goes on. I feel a lot more confident in predicting the minutes and their actual rotation this year than I do Kentucky's, for what it's worth. But yeah, I'm on the Con Nipple train, just looking for a reason to say nipple, I guess. But he's going to be a good one. And the guard forward eligibility, price of 5.2 just makes a lot of sense there. So him or Malowak, if the masses are going to make their stand and play Cooper flag, I'm good with it. We just have to keep him under 40 at that price, right? And I think we can. All right, moving on. Let's go to Howard versus Kansas. Another one that you would think is a surefire blowout, but I would hold the phone for a minute because this Howard team is very good. Kansas is favored by 25.5, total of 152.5. This Howard squad over the years has been pretty good. They've been really chalky whenever they're in the tournament and late season situations. They have familiar names back that you should know at this point. Bryce Harris, who has been a fantasy stud when he's on the slate. Marcus Dockery, who's got some shooting ability, and Dom Campbell. Those are the three names really to know from last year's team. There is no more Shy Guy, unfortunately. Shy Harris, we loved him, but they do get the LaSalle transfer Anwar Gill, who will be a pretty big part of what this team does as well. Now, the 7.9 price on Bryce Harris is pretty tough to get to, I think. Whenever they've been on the slate in the past, he's been priced at like 5K and 6K. So I am happy that he's priced up there. I do have some interest in Marcus Dockery at 5.3, but I worry that he's going to have DeJuan Harris in his face a little bit. So that defensive presence kind of makes it tough for me to want him. I want some kind of exposure to Howard on this slate, but I just feel a little bit iffy about paying up for Bryce Harris. So I may not get it in my main lineup, but I do like Howard, and I'm kind of leaning towards a plus 22 or 25.5 bet towards the Howard side. Now, Kansas, they've got a myriad of new faces, still have DeJuan Harris back to run the show, defensive dynamo, assist extraordinaire, runs the offense. And you say about DeJuan Harris in games where they need him to score, and he does. They typically win. DeJuan Harris isn't a big-time scorer, but when he has to be, he can. Hunter Dickinson is also back, priced at 9.5, so a decision there. You want to go Dickinson, or do you want to go Flag? KJ Adams priced at 7.1. So those are the familiar faces that we know with Kansas, but they definitely have a, as far as the transfer portal went and teams that kind of zeroed in and building out their roster, Bill Self and the gang did a really nice job. Wisconsin transfer AJ Thor is there. That's the biggest name most that people are talking about. There has been some less than stellar coach speak returns from Bill Self so far from exhibition, scrimmages, practice. I am worried that Thor ends up in the doghouse at times. We know the famous or infamous, I guess, Bill Self doghouse, and how he'll just bench guys for long periods of time. I think starting off paying almost 8K for AJ Thor is a little bit risky. I think people will do it because of the high expectations that he has. But I'm gun shy on it. Just I think I'll wait to roster Store. If anything, Hunter Dickinson would be the pay up, again, going up against a Howard front court that he should be able to dominate. He does technically have a questionable tag attached to him because of a foot issue, but I'm not worried about that. He's going to play. There could be, if it does turn into a blowout, some minutes issues there, but I think if Howard can keep this close enough that we do get closer to 30, 32 for Dickinson at that price, he can absolutely pay off with 30 to 32 minutes. So he would be my preferred between him and Store. Harris at 7.2 is a little too expensive, and Adams at 7.1. We've just, his whole career and our whole lives, we paid mid 5 to 6K for him. So it's a little tough for me to want to pay that for him just yet, especially with how deep this roster is. The starting lineup, if I had to guess, would be AJ Store, DeJuan Harris, Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams, and then probably one of Rylan Griffin or Zeke Mayo. Both really uber athletic players. Mayo from SDSU, Griffin from Bama. I'm a little worried about this team. For years we complained about, man, they're just not very deep. How are they going to win it in March? And obviously they have won a title recently, but the last 2 years it's been like, man, that depth, it's a killer. What are they going to do? They've answered those questions and are super deep. I mean, the freshman, Flory Badunga, he could be a starter on like 80% of rosters out there, and he may start for Kansas. He's going to be really good. Shaquille Moore is going to contribute. David Coit comes over from NIU, where he was like a scoring dynamo. Where does he fit in? I'm really concerned about him because we've seen mid-major scorers come to Kansas before and just do nothing. But this is a very deep roster. And for DFS purposes, I think we're going to get a lot of guys who play 15 to 18 minutes and they're relegated to not playable. And I could see something like that happening to Rylan Griffin. I could see something like that happening to Zeke Mayo. Mayo has incredible stats, and people might look at his 6-7 price tag and be like, wow, this is a no-brainer to play this kid. High usage guy playing, all 40 minutes. That's just not going to happen in Kansas. It's going to be a factor, certainly, but he's not going to have that same role. The guys at Kansas are still going to be DeJuan Harris, KJ Adams, and Hunter Dickinson with AJ Store splashed in. But again, that looming doghouse hovering over him. If you want to play a Kansas guy that's not the pay-up Dickinson, Flory Badunga at 3.5, if he starts, I think is a must-play at that point. If he doesn't start and comes off the bench, he did start in the last exhibition, for what it's worth. If he doesn't start, more of a GPP look, probably a little bit harder to predict his minutes there. But as a starter, I love it. However, young players in history of Bill Self teams at the forward spots, guards have more leeway, but front court youngsters under Self have habitually and historically played way less minutes, gotten way less usage, way less opportunities than other freshmen around the country, regardless of their high pedigree like Badunga has. So it could be a situation where even if he starts, he does some kind of bonehead mistake, or maybe it's just not working. He gets 5 minutes. He doesn't see the floor again. Suddenly, yeah, that 3.5 price was nice, but I just paid for a 0. I don't want to pay for a 0 at any price. So just tread carefully there. We have some other guys below 5K that maybe are a little bit safer, but Badunga has talent. There's no doubt about that. All right, moving on to Jackson State versus Houston. Blowout city, absolutely. Houston's 35.5-point favorites, total of 137.5. I have a rule. I will not roster players against Houston. It's typically not advisable until March when we have to. We've got tournament games, conference tournament, the big dance. Like, we've got to start taking players against Houston when you're forced. Since last time I looked, it's not March, it's November, and the clock is the calendar is turning to November 4th. I'm not forced. You're not forced. We all are going to give consent with this fade and not target against Houston with players from Jackson State. So thank you for listening. I just wanted to throw that out there. We're not going to roster Jackson State guys, and we're probably not going to roster against Houston very often. I will say, with the caveat, big Monday slates where there's 2 to 3 games, maybe we have to, but for the most part, let's not do it on an 11-game slate. For Houston, I do have interest. The likely starting lineup here is going to be LJ Cryer, Manny Sharp, big season ahead, breakout season for Manny Sharp. He's going to have the season that everybody wanted for Tremont Mark if he stayed with Houston. Juwan Roberts, and Milos Uzan, the transfer from Oklahoma, and JoJo Tugler, who is back. He's healthy and ready to take over. Javier Francis, who started in the front court last year, pretty limited offensively, does have some defensive prowess, does have a questionable tag, but it's actually leaning more doubtful than probable. So he's probably not going to play. He's not an option at 5'9" anyways, but that is a good thing for JoJo Tugler, who's priced at 3.3. Now, I just said, Badunga at 3.5. There's some upside there, but risky. There's some sub 5K, sub 4K guys who are, in my mind, safer, more upside, and don't necessarily have the threat of a doghouse leaning over them or hanging over them, and that's JoJo Tugler. There's others too, but JoJo Tugler at 3.3K, an absolute dog. Had he not gotten injured last year, coming into this season, you guys would all know about Tugler. Anyone who is in the industry, provides content, knows about Tugler. The RPS guys talking to me about Tugler in the past. This is a really big stud that we have on our hands. He is going to fill up the box score. That's the nice thing. He's not necessarily going to come out there and be some 15-point per game scorer. He's going to grab a ton of rebounds. He's going to block shots. He's going to do some things for us. And I am very, very happy to see that he's basically shook off all the injury stuff and is good to go. So he played 23 minutes in that exhibition win over Texas A&M. He took 5 shots. Now, he didn't score any points. And you might be like, why the hell are you trying to talk to us about a guy that didn't score any points? But as I just said, that's not necessarily going to be his role. He's going to get put back dunks. He's going to get alleys. He's going to do that. But he's going to be doing peripherals like absolute insanity. 9 rebounds against that Texas A&M front court. Granted, they were missing Solo Washington. 2 blocks, 2 steals. He added an assist for good measure. This is going to be a guy. He's going to be one of those dudes that scores like 4 to 5 points, but he's frequently pulling down 10-plus rebounds. He's giving you 5 to 6 stocks, as the kids say, and his price is going to rise for sure. But right now at 3.3, if he gives us 8 to 10 rebounds and 3 to 4 steals / blocks, 0 points, we're going to be happier than hell. And I think that's what he's going to do against Jackson State, especially if Javier Francis can't go. So JoJo Tugler, you're up, my friend. One of my favorite values on the slate. And now that he is in a starting position, it's absolute game changer there. Don't worry, he'll get some points, but peripherals is where we're really hitting there for a near min price JoJo Tugler. I do think he will get steamed enough by the time lock hits tomorrow. More people are going to talk about him, make the recognition. Those, other sites that are providing content are going to be talking about JoJo Tugler. I already know Steve will, because he's a big Tugler guy too, I'm pretty sure. So he's my favorite. Manny Sharp, breakout candidate. He's going to be a big time scorer for this team. Without Jamal Shed, you would think LJ Cryer becomes the leader and he's going to be good, but I think Manny Sharp, this is his team. Juwan Roberts, solid as a inside outside guy. Uzan adds passing, defense, spot up shooting. Excuse me. They've got a solid bench in Neelick Wilson, Terry Arsenal, who's going to be good as well, Cedric Lath, Ramon Walker, who's healthy, and Mercy Miller, another son of Percy Miller. If you're not familiar with that, Master P. He's got sons everywhere playing basketball, and Mercy Miller's the next one coming up. Much better than Hersey Miller, I've got to say, and Little Romeo. But he might actually get minutes this year. He looked pretty good in the exhibition as well. Granted, he played some late minutes. He did play 14, hit a 3, 11 points, had a couple of assists. He looked decent, but I wouldn't expect him to get a ton of minutes. If anything, we know about Houston, they play their starters heavy. We can expect Roberts, Uzan, Cryer, and Sharp to all play 30-plus minutes barring foul trouble. Tugler's probably going to live in the 18 to 22 range barring fouls, especially once Francis comes back, but he's going to have really great rates usage-wise, all of his stuff. I'm a big Tugler guy. Coming out of this game, he is going to be the primary usage guy for me that is in my main lineup in the majority. Also going to have some Manny Sharp shares there at 6-1. The Thigh Bowl play of the day. Is that your sneak? Love it. Don Plays, always, you know what? I love Don Plays, man. Thank you for the support. No matter what I'm doing in the summer with a preview show or I'm on here talking about WNBA, I'm on here talking college football, you're always making an appearance. I appreciate it very, very much. So much football. I forgot about college basketball. How could you? How could you? And football is still happening. Don't worry. We got Bowling Green on Tuesday. Harold Fannin. We'll be talking all about him on Tuesday. Good to see you. Appreciate it. I always can count on you dropping by to show some support. So thank you very much, my good sir. All right, moving on. We have a competitive game. Day one, all these non-con blowouts, but we do have some competitive games on the slate. Memphis versus Missouri, total of 153. Memphis 4.5-point favorites. It is at the FedEx, so it's a home game for Memphis, but I got to tell you, I'm much higher on Missouri than I am Memphis, and plus 4.5 on the Missouri side looks like a really good bet, and even sprinkling a little on the money line. And I've seen some pretty sharp bettors out there already kind of hyping up the Missouri side. I would have liked it to be the opposite, but this Missouri team is going to be very, very good. Definitely bouncing back, looking more like the team that made the tournament 2 years ago and less like the team that the bottom fell out last year. Missouri, recent exhibition win. This is what I have to reference over Lincoln. Big time victory. They were without Tony Perkins, who was held out for precautionary reasons, the Iowa transfer. He should be good to go. So don't worry about any, questionable tags or injury designations. I expect to see him in the starting lineup. Now, in that exhibition game, the two stars of it were Mark Mitchell, the Duke transfer, who's going to have a very big season, please believe, and Caleb Grill. And I know that you're probably thinking to yourself, Caleb Grill still has collegiate eligibility. He does. He's played at UNLV. He's played at Iowa State twice. And now he's here with Missouri, still has eligibility. He hit 5 triples in their exhibition game on his way to 20 points. Mark Mitchell scored 22, 15 in the first half. This is a very good team. Tamar Bates, Anthony Robinson, defensive dynamo off the bench, Hakeem Warwick. So I just said Hakeem Warwick, had in my mind in Syracuse. Marcus Warwick. After I said that, I was like, wait a minute. Hakeem Warwick doesn't have collegiate eligibility left. It's not Syracuse. Marcus Warwick. This is a very good team with a lot of scoring punch. Warwick, he terrorized the Horizon League for the last few years, one of the best scorers in the country, and they might be bringing him off the bench. That's how good this Missouri team is. Jacob Cruz, Aiden Shaw, Josh Gray. That's going to be the rotation. They're going to be about 8-9 deep. There is a freshman that I want to put on your radar in Honor Boateng. I would have been higher on him probably if this was like Missouri playing Mississippi Valley State or something like that in a competitive game. I don't know that Boateng necessarily is going to get a ton of minutes. He's down there at 3-2. He's got some intrigue, GPP value special perhaps. But he's going to be a big-time factor. I like Boateng. He's a natural scorer, and I think that he's going to work his way through this pecking order faster than people realize. This is a team with a litany of guards, Perkins, Bates, Cruz, Mitchell, who's kind of a tweener, Caleb Grill, but Boateng's too good not to play. The number one option, though, is Mark Mitchell at 6'4". I don't think, and he's got the guard forward eligibility, which we love. I don't think we're going to see Mitchell below 7K once we get past like mid-November. He's going to be a 30, 35 fantasy point per game guy at minimum. He's going to be the all everything for this team. Peripherals are going to be the thing that we need him to really, show us any consistency there, but he's going to be a big time scorer for this team. They're built around him. Having Perkins healthy and in the lineup is only going to make that easier for him because Perkins can set the table. We did see Mitchell average 6 rebounds a game last year at Duke, so he has that ability. He has developed further as a 3-point shooter, supposedly in the offseason, and he's going to add some steals, some other stuff. So I like Mitchell at 6'4". I think we're going to see a lot of studs and scrubs type of builds because there's these speculative 5K or less options, and people, like I said, are going to go to Cooper Flag or perhaps Hunter Dickinson. So plays like Mark Mitchell at 6'4" are just going to get forgotten about, but he has the absolute high upside to be one of the highest scorers on the slate. And that might be crazy to say right now, but just wait until you see after tomorrow or a handful of games just how good Mark Mitchell really is now that he's out of that Duke rotation. On the Memphis side, I'm not nearly as excited about them. I think this, they're going to be a good team for DFS purposes when you land on the right one. And I think that's going to be the key. I think the variance within a game-to-game basis for this guys is going to be just treacherous. They have Tyrese Hunter, who we know from his Iowa State and Texas days. He can give you 35 one game. He can give you 5 the next. We'll see what happens there. PJ Haggerty, the Tulsa transfer, absolute just stud. Almost 40 fantasy points a game last year for Tulsa. He definitely looked solid in their exhibitions. He's a bit pricey for me at the beginning. I think people will go to him thinking that he's going to put up those kind of numbers, and he might. But look at how deep this team really is. Colby Rogers is in from Wichita State. Nick Jourdain is still there. Mo Cisse. Tyreek Smith, if he's healthy enough. They have gotten really deep, especially on the wing and in the front court, which definitely helps with Haggerty's usage. But some of these guys coming off the bench, I think, are going to be more are going to have more opportunities than people realize. And one name I want to put you on is the youngster Jared Harris, who's sitting down there at 3K. He did start in their exhibition game, had 4 points, 3 or 4 rebounds. He is a uber talented kid. I think he's going to end up getting more minutes than people realize. If he ends up being a starter tomorrow, I definitely have interest in another guy at 3K there. Not as confident in him as I am JoJo Tugler, but after what I saw in the exhibition game and some of the scrimmage reports, Harris is too good for them not to use. And I think he's going to ultimately end up usurping Colby Rogers even in the rotation. So we'll see if that happens, but that's just a name to kind of be aware of right now. All right, let's move on. We're whipping right on through here. Next game, Florida versus South Florida. And I am like super hyped for this game. I think this is one that people are going to overlook in the grand scheme of the slate. It's a total of 152. The Gators are favored by 10. Now, of course, we need to pay our respects here. You know, this South Florida team lost their head coach very young in his 40s, Amir Abdur-Rahim. Anyone you talk to that was in the industry and the college basketball media or just college basketball in general spoke so highly of him. Looked like he was going to be like one of the best coaches of his era in no time at all. Endless jobs. Had the South Florida team that was ran into the ground going in the right direction. Now, they did lose a lot of key players to the portal, but they've got some guys back who are very hard-nosed. This is going to be a very strong team defensively. Interim head coach is going to be Ben Fletcher, who was with Rahim at Kennesaw State. They are going to have the gesture of leaving at the all home or in all games a empty bench spot for Rahim. So, I mean, I would have pegged South Florida as a dark horse tournament team with Abdur-Rahim. Now it would seem like, oh, without him, they're going to fall apart. But I think they use this, sports, numbers, projections, optimizers, all that's great. But sports has a lot of human element to it. If you played anything from third grade basketball up to collegiate level, wherever you might have played, that, there's a lot of emotion involved in sports. And you'd have a pep in your step when you're playing in front of your girlfriend, or you're sick. You lost a family member. Like, there's a lot of things mentally that can happen, and you just either step up or you don't. Not a lot of in-betweens. And I think the South Florida team does, in fact, step up and has a really good season on their way to a tournament bid, which would be the ultimate honor for Coach Abdur-Rahim. So looking at the South Florida team, the names to know, and they're not going to be too terribly deep, which is nice too. Jaden Reed, who I absolutely love. Jaden Reed is going to be a stud. Kobe Knox should be one of their better scorers now. Brandon Stroud, who's back. Jameel Reynolds, who somehow has like a 9th year of eligibility. He's been everywhere. Corey Walker. Deontay Green, who transfers over from Florida State. And then the JUCO transfer, Jalen Wharton, who has some pretty good scoring ability as well. The two names that I'm really looking at here for South Florida would be Kobe Knox and Jaden Reed. I think a lot of people just assume that this Florida team, 10 points, bet them, they're gonna stomp on South Florida, but that's not going to necessarily be the case. Kobe Knox at 5'6", maybe more of the conventional play, but I think I'm going with Jaden Reed at 4'9". Don't expect a lot of rostership on him whatsoever. I don't see any way he doesn't play the entire game, 37, 38 minutes we're talking here. big time, high caliber on ball defender, very high steal rate, very aggressive, improved as a scorer as the season went on. He was still pretty raw, but now in his second year, this kid's going to take off. Need to see some more from him with rebounding and assists. And I think he does take on more of a facilitator role here, but they're going to depend on him a lot. He's going to be the one defending the other team's best player on the perimeter frequently, which is automatically going to put him on the floor a lot. And you might think that tires him out on the offensive side, but that didn't happen much last year. And I think this is a guy that's going to be way, way underrated. As the season goes on, people will start to figure it out. But day one, Jaden Reed at 4'9", absolutely in our player pool and deserves consideration. On the Florida side, Walter, the usual subcast of characters here. Walter Clayton is back, fairly priced at 7'5", Will Richard at 6'3", Alex Condon at 6'2". You guys know I have an affinity for him. And then you've got some value pieces returning here. Sam Alexis 4'9", Thomas Howe at 4'2", and Denzel Aberdeen at 3'7". The FAU transfer Elijah Martin priced at 7'3". I think this will be a situation that he was in with John L. Davis at FAU the last couple of years. He and Clayton will take turns having the big games. Martin's, to me, more of the sidekick in this relationship. Clayton is going to be a big-time DFS play on a game-to-game basis. We know that they are going to be without Micah Handlogden for the season after the gruesome injury he suffered last year. We should see some additional minutes for a guy like Ruben Chiniello, spent time with the Cougars. And of course, I expect a bigger season out of Alex Condon if he can control his fouling. Big if, as you know. All right, moving on to the next game here. We have UNC Asheville versus Alabama. Alabama gave us multiple exhibitions really, but two against some higher caliber teams that we'll talk about. A total of 160.5. Bama 24.5 point favorites. Let's start with the Asheville kids first. The names to know in the starting five, like as we go on, if we get some mid-major slates or Asheville plays a team that's not Alabama, there is some firepower here. Fletcher, AB, and Josh Banks are the top two returners. The rest of the starting five shake out Sage Tolentino, Jordan Marsh, and Toyaz Solomon. I can't realistically say we should play any of these guys, but the Bama matchup, typically with the way they play and the pace they play at, is a very fantasy-friendly matchup. But this defense of Bama, I think, is going to be quite possibly the best they've had in the last decade. Very high on this Alabama team, as most people are, but most are talking about their offense, not talking about their defense. And I think the defense is going to get after it this year. You can have AB at the price of 5'2", Banks down there at 4'5". A little cute for me. I definitely think, they're going to score some points somewhere, right? But I think we can do a little bit better here. Ultimately, I think they get embarrassed, and this is a big-time blowout. Now, Alabama thinks it's going to be a big-time blowout as well, because several of their players are either going to be out or on minutes restrictions. Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell, and Aiden Sherrill all expected to play but not start. The only real starter there is Grant Nelson, maybe Latrell Wrightsell, not Sherrill, but they're going to be on minutes caps, and that's going to be enough to get them, up and down the court, work out a little bit, get a sense of their game legs, whatever, but they're not going to play big minutes. And that's going to make it extremely difficult for us to really utilize any of those guys. Instead, we want to kind of target our way towards another value piece that I think will be popular, and for good reason. And it makes too much sense. But I'm talking about the flipped commit who was originally going to go to Kansas, now with Bama, and LeBaron Philon, who had an excellent exhibition season. Again, they played the likes of Wake Forest in exhibition. They played Memphis in their exhibition. So some higher caliber teams. And those games were getting physical. So the freshman Philon, he got the start in that Memphis game. Looking at it, Latrell Wrightsell coming off the bench, there's a good chance that he gets to start again. And if he doesn't, we could still see 20-plus minutes from him, and he looks the part. I'm very happy he got a chance to go here instead of Kansas, because there was a logjam at Kansas at his position. Obviously, there's a bit of a logjam here at Bama at his position. We have Mark Sears, Chris Youngblood, Wrightsell, Houston Malley, who transferred in from Pepperdine, who's a big scorer. Aiden Holloway comes over from Auburn. There's some really good players here. The other freshman, Darian Reed, who's kind of a combo guard wing forward. So there's some guys here, but I think Philon, from what I've seen in the exhibition, like, consider me a believer in him right away. Playing in a fast-paced run and gun system like this is going to be to his benefit. He's sitting there at 3.1K, a valuable guard spot. How often are we like, you hear in Discords or on shows, man, I wish I had, 8 guard slots tonight. But that's a player you want to have. If you play Philon and Tugler, basically the world is your oyster at that point. You can play anybody that you want to after that. There's nobody out of your reach. I do like Darian Reed quite a bit. He's priced there at 5.3. A little bit less excited about him. He looks like it's going to take a time to get acclimated. He had some growing pains in the exhibitions. Granted, Memphis and Wake Forest are on a whole nother level than UNC Asheville. And in a game that we expected to be a blowout, how much Mark Sears do we need to see? How much Cliff Omarui do we need to see who's transferred over? Jaron Stevenson, same thing. The starting 5, probably somewhere in the vicinity of Mark Sears, Omarui, Aiden Holloway, Jaron Stevenson, and probably LeBaron Philon, depending on what we think here with Darian Reed, Houston Mallet, guys like that, I think are primed to come off the bench. So pretty strong rotation. Will end up being deep when they're all healthy, probably 10 deep, but LeBaron Philon is the one to look at there. And granted, with all that value, we got to pay up somewhere. Cooper Flagg starts to look pretty appealing. Hunter Dickinson, pretty appealing. RJ Davis, who we're going to get to in a second, and Mark Sears on his very own team. Or maybe we just pay for Wade Taylor, who's going to play, 39 minutes against UCF. Maybe that's the answer. So, the mid-tier is going to be very low owned. That's my big takeaway here from this slate. All right, let's go on to Elon versus North Carolina. Total of 151.5. The Heels are 27.5 point favorites. Another situation where I'm not too keen on trying to get really cute on finding someone from Elon. The top 2 players are TK Simpkins and Sam Sherry. Wouldn't you know it? They're priced like the top 2 players, so we're not getting a Simpkins at 3.5 or something silly like DK would do in the past. He's priced at 8.1. He may pay that off, honestly, with his usage, but that's going to be pretty tough. This North Carolina team, they're uber athletic. They're going to defend a hell of a lot better. They're going to be more guard-oriented and a bit faster without Armando Bacot, but I think they're going to put Elon in a blender of hell. Looking at the starting lineup here, the post-Armando Bacot era starts now. It's going to be tough. But we're looking at Elliot Kadu, Seth Trimble, RJ Davis, Cade Tyson, and Jalen Washington. The rotation, the 2 freshmen, Drake Powell and Ian Jackson. Ian Jackson looks great in their exhibition. Then Allen Lubin, who transferred from Vandy, originally from Notre Dame. Jalen Withers, and the late in the summer transfer from Georgia Tech, Tashawn Cloud. Now, I said it all the time last year heading into the season, and I especially said it after every Tennessee game, but North Carolina whiffed hard on Dalton Knecht. Like, he was the perfect transfer for their program, the one guy they should have gotten above anyone else. They decided to get Paxton Wojcik instead, and that didn't work out. Going into this year, they did not want to miss out on Dalton Knecht Part 2. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say Cade Tyson is going to have a Dalton Knecht-like season by any means, but he does offer 3-point shooting. He offers 3-level scoring like Dalton, and now they have themselves a sidekick type of scorer for RJ Davis that, Dalton Knecht and RJ Davis together would have been just sick. Absolutely sick. North Carolina could have scored 150 points a game with those two. No doubt about it. So a lot of pressure on Tyson right away, but, when you play with the reigning ACC Player of the Year and RJ Davis, it tends to make your life a lot easier. RJ Davis averaged 21.5 points per game. I honestly think he could average 27 or 28 this year, which you don't see too often from high major players, but watch. Jalen Washington has shown that he can handle when Armando Bacot was injured or from foul trouble. Washington showed those flashes, so I'm okay with him at the 5. And then if the exhibitions are anything to look at here, and really the only thing we have to look at, Elliott Cadu has improved tremendously as a passer, and Seth Trimble, who hit the portal and then decided to come back, has looked like a absolute machine scoring the basketball. One of the games they didn't have RJ Davis, so he scored 30 real. Second game with RJ Davis, he still scored in double digits. Now, Seth Trimble is priced at 3.8K, and he's likely going to start. If the game blows out, do we end up seeing Drake Powell, who's 4-5, play a ton? Deshaun Cloud, who we've seen in the past, perhaps. Elliott Cadu is a pretty safe play at 5'9". Davis is one of my favorite pay-ups always because he's going to score 1 million points. But Seth Trimble at 3.8, based on the offseason I've seen from him, is a laughable price. I think Seth Trimble could go like 8x at that price in the right situation. And I'm not saying that facetiously at all. Took me a minute. The first exhibition without RJ Davis, I thought, wow, 30's a lot, but no RJ Davis. But the scoring continued. Now in real game live action, he's going to be the third or fourth option. So he's not going to be scoring any 30-point games anytime soon. But if it gets out of hand or RJ Davis gets into foul trouble or, a myriad of things that happen in these non-con games, Trimble is going to get his opportunity. And he's probably going to play 25-ish minutes regardless of what that final score says. So he's slotted in third there for me in those sub 4K plays behind JoJo Tugler and LeBaron Fillon. But he's definitely a guy that I'm considering heavily in my main build. I don't want to get too involved in those exhibition scores, but honestly, Trimble looks like a completely different player. And the fact that he ended up spurning the transfer portal with offers to come back to UNC kind of tells us that he didn't come back to not get starter minutes, not get opportunities, not get usage, right? He's going to be a factor. So watch out for the Seth Trimble maturation and explosion. We'll see if it continues here into the actual season with games that count. All right, moving on. We have 2 games left. Feels good. We're stretching out our legs here. We're getting caught up on the college basketball season. Still have about 7 more previews dropping in the morning from the ACC. You guys will want to check out. Also have my Heisman update article there for college football. A lot going on. Content galore coming your way when you wake up in the morning. Some of us, not naming names, may have to pull an all-nighter. All right, moving on. We got Texas versus Ohio State. This takes place in the, T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, part of the Hall of Fame series. So a neutral court game here. Texas comes in at 3-point favorites, total of 146. A totally revamped Texas team. They are going to have a different player pretty much at every position aside from Caden Shedrick, who will be the starting center. Tremont Mark is dealing with an ankle issue, so he didn't end up playing in their last bit of exhibition preseason scrimmages. The ankle issue is not designated with a tag on DK, so be aware of that. People may overlook that, but he's definitely not 100%. There is a large conglomerate of Texas beat writers that think he may actually miss this game. Very important start to the season against a team like Ohio State, but it's an ankle. If he can't go, he can't go. Trey Johnson is very high priced at 6'9". Trey Johnson is the freshman Don's All-American, going to be an absolute stud for them. Priced appropriately. I would have loved to have taken a shot on Trey Johnson at 6'9", and I still might. He is going to be one of my favorites from this program, but the transfer portal was kind to this team. Looking at it, if Mark can't go, I would expect the starting lineup to shake out with the Indiana State transfer Julian Larry, Jordan Pope, who comes over from Oregon State as a big-time scorer, Trey Johnson, Arthur Kaluma, and Caden Shedrick. Now, there is a chance Jason Kent, the other Indiana State transfer, starts over Kaluma. I would doubt that very much, but there are people who are saying that is a possibility in projected starting lineup articles that I have read. We'll see. This is a much deeper Texas team. Obviously, they have options kind of like that in Kansas. The depth of the program was a death sentence to them, especially when they had injuries. But now they've got guys who can compete coming over. Kendall Weaver's back. Weaver has been the most talked about outside of Trey Johnson in summer camp and exhibitions and scrimmages and all that. The staff is really, really high on Weaver. He's priced there at 4.2. Not so sure I can get there with him. If Jason Kent starts, he is priced at only 3.8, but you have to keep in mind, we're not in Kansas anymore. More specifically, we're not in Indiana State anymore. So 3.8 for a player of his caliber when he's priced at damn near 8K all the time for the Sycamores won't necessarily be the case here. We're talking about 20 to 25 minutes, and he's split in a position with Arthur Kaluma. So that's going to be a little bit difficult. Kent can play multiple positions, so that's nice for him. If Mark misses, we could get to closer to 30 minutes for Kent, but that 3.8 price tag for him looks better than it probably actually is. Pope at 7.4, Kaluma at 7.7. Those are the prices I expect those guys to be at throughout the season. They may fluctuate between 7 and 8K, but we're not getting any, major value there. Just depends on when you're building the rest of your lineup. If you have spots that land there, don't mind a guy like Pope, but certainly not my first look, especially facing the Ohio State perimeter, which has lockdown defenders like Bruce Thornton and, harassing defenders like Michi Johnson. So it's not the best matchup on paper for Texas perimeter anyways. Speaking of Ohio State, Bruce Thornton, damn, he's expensive at 8.7. It's a tough pill to swallow. Definitely a guy capable of putting up 40. The nice thing about Thornton is he plays 37, 38 minutes per game. So you're paying for a guy who is going to be on the court. Michi Johnson, the prodigal son, has come back. He's priced at 6.8. I think that's fair. He had a nice 2-year stint with South Carolina. Kind of proven to himself he can be a solid alpha guard, maybe the back, the sidekick to Bruce Thornton. Really like their backcourt. The Duke transfer, Sean Stewart. He's too high to actually use, unfortunately, at 6K, but watch out. Sean Stewart showed us many flashes in the little bit of minutes he got at Duke of being a high caliber player, highly rated recruit formerly. Should get a sizable amount of minutes here. Aaron Bradshaw, the other player in the front court, most likely center, did have a head injury. Supposedly, per John Rothstein, he will be available, but we'll have to see. If he can't go, you're looking at a little bit of a smaller lineup there against Texas, which would mean Caden Shedrick would have to be more in consideration. Devin Royal is still around, and then the SDSU transfer, Micah Parrish, who is priced there at 5K. Definitely don't mind him. Parrish had one of the best shooting games of anyone on the team next to Michi Johnson in their exhibition/scrimmages. That's pretty much it. The competitive games aren't as exciting, honestly. Like the South Florida game is, the Memphis, Missouri game is, but Ohio State, Texas, I just feel like it's a better game to bet the Ohio State side, for what it's worth, money line, than it is actual DFS. I do like Ohio State a lot. Michi Johnson and Bruce Thornton are going to be just a nasty duo in the Big Ten. But the prices on these guys is all pretty elevated, which we can fit with the value that we have, but we're going to have so much value left over. We can probably do a little bit better than the 6.8 that Michi Johnson provides us. And it's not as if Texas defensively is going to be a pushover either. Guys like, if Mark plays, obviously Pope, Trey Johnson in high school, these are all guys who can get after it on the defensive side. All right, last game on the slate, Baylor versus Gonzaga, taking place in Spokane. We just get in a vehicle and, actually just take a jog to Spokane on the other side of the state. 156.5 total. Gonzaga 5-point favorites. Gonzaga deep as hell, man. They're not going to have, for a second straight year, they're going to be without Steel Venters, which is really sad because he basically tore the other ACL. So that probably ends his career because it's 2 straight years. Last year, losing him was a very tough pill to swallow because their rotation, their depth was not it. They had too much youth. They didn't have enough experience, and it was very, very bad. This year, they have so much depth that they bring in Braden Smith, not Purdue Braden Smith, but Colgate Braden Smith, and are able to put him on a red shirt because they don't even need to use him this year. So back familiar faces, Graham Ike, Ryan Nemhart, Ben Gregg, Nolan Hickman, Braden Huff, and Dusty Stromer. Continuity, we love it. In the transfer portal era, continuity is a thing that you don't see as often. New faces, new places. They've got to learn how to play each other. It takes time for that to come together and gel. It won't happen for Gonzaga because they've got majority of their lineup back, And these guys all know what Mark Few's system is, how to play, and play at a high level. Not only that, but they did bring in some pieces from the portal to kind of build out their roster. Pepperdine transfer Michael Ayahi, who is basically a 40 fantasy point per game guy at Pepperdine. Khalif Battle, who's been around the block, several schools. Last year at Arkansas, remember, he broke the slate time after time after time after time. Different role with Gonzaga, is not going to quite be the 40% usage guy that he was at Arkansas, that lived at the foul line. What was he taking, like 15 plus free throws every night? But it's being a nice second unit guy. They may decide to start him potentially, but bringing Khalif Battle off the bench shows you what kind of depth Gonzaga has. A little bit harder. You could look at the 7-4 price and say, damn, this guy can break it at that. But again, different role. Got to really see how it gets acclimated there. Ayahi at 8-3, same thing. Where is he going to fall in terms of the pecking order? Braden Huff and Ben Gregg are both guys who are going to be further developed this year and demand more of the scoring share. Nolan Hickman is pretty appealing at 7K. And then, of course, Graham Ike at 8-2. If he can avoid fouls, is a really nice play as well. On the Baylor side, they did a nice job pricing these guys. VJ Edgecombe, I think, to me, obviously Cooper Flagg, one and done, probably number one pick, possibly. They're, Ace Bailey of Rutgers, but that's a story for another day when Rutgers is on the slate. But I think VJ Edgecombe is going to be one of the best freshmen in the country for like fantasy purposes. On a game-to-game basis, I think we're talking about Edgecombe putting up 30 plus in his sleep. He's going to be so good. They price him at 8K, so they put you to the test right away, and especially in a hostile environment against a team like Gonzaga. Not really the spot I want to, test out the freshman right away, but I am going to have my eye on him closely, of course. They do bring in Norchad Omier, who we love, the Miami transfer, Jeremy Roach from Duke. Roach and Omier giving them a veteran presence. Watch out for this Baylor team. Not enough people are talking about them as a title contender, Final Four contender, but they absolutely are. Langston Love, Jaden Nunn are both back. Josh Ojiowuna, some nice continuity there, but the Roach, Edgecombe, Omier trio is going to be a really big factor in the college basketball landscape this year. And then the other freshman, Robert Wright, another guy who people just aren't talking about, that's going to be a pretty big factor in the offense. If Langston Love can't stay healthy or just isn't effective, like, it's nice to have Wright there ready to go. And they also bring in the Jalen Celestine, transfer from Cal, 3-point specialist pretty much. So just kind of adds what Baylor likes to do there with their 3-guard lineups. He's a guy they can bring off the bench for that. As far as DFS plays, love Omier at 8-1. Anytime Omier's not 9K, like, how do we not play him? I do worry that there's going to be a bad whistle for Baylor. Foul trouble on the road. There's a huge risk there. Probably your best bet is to go with like a Jeremy Roach, who is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. If the younger players get rattled or they're having some ineffectiveness, he's going to be able to run the offense. He's going to be able to get baskets. He's going to be able to make some things happen. So between Roach and perhaps Jaden Nunn, who's priced at 5.5, that's really kind of the safer looks. But if you don't care about the potentially bad whistle or the road stuff, Norchad Omier is by far and away the best player in this entire game when it comes to fantasy purposes. Love Norchad. This is way too cheap for him on a singular basis, but remains to be seen if we can actually go there. Very late game, starts at 8:30 on the West Coast, 11:30 Eastern time. So when I go live tomorrow to break down the Tuesday slate, this game will still be going on. So hopefully one of us or all of us from the show and the community will be having a great first day and all competing with each other in the top 10 for the big tournament. All right, so that is it. Quick, easy. We knock out the slate. Bam, bam. We did it. Give you a core here in a minute, but let's go check out some Prize Picks and Underdog. Prize Picks is offering very little. They tried to keep it to like the Gonzaga game, and there's not a lot of like numbers I feel great about on Prize Picks, but there are two. Norchad Omier over 10.5 rebounds plus assists. Peripherals, I think he's going to have 10 rebounds on his own. So can you give us 2 assists? I think so. Or 1. And then VJ Edgecombe over 12 points. Even if he struggles, has an inefficient game, the volume's going to be there for Edgecombe. Looking at their roster, like they're going to take threes with Celestine. They're going to take those shots with none. Love, I'm not convinced is going to be that big of a factor. I think Edgecombe is just, he's going to do a lot of damage on the offensive end. So like a 4 for 18 type of shooting night, but I think he scores like 20. And then over on Underdog, we're getting some more advantageous numbers. There is day basketball tomorrow. Santa Clara playing. Adema Ball over 20.5 points plus rebounds. Ball is liable in this game against St. Louis with Coach Schertz, who's over there from Indiana State with Robbie Avila and all them. Defensively, they're going to be a bit suspect at times. Santa Clara is already a pretty porous defense. Ball should clear that number pretty easily. So to be clear, I'm much more confident in Underdog on this first day than I am Prize Picks. Maybe tomorrow they'll have more offerings, but as it stands right now, Underdog, Adema Ball over 20.5 points plus rebounds, and Manny Obasake over 16.5 points, rebounds, and assists. Manny is going to be a 12 to 14 point per game scorer. So that PRA number will never be this low typically once we're 2-3 weeks into the season. So take advantage of that while you still can. Over 16.5 PRA. That is the top prop on either site, Prize Picks or Underdog, anywhere. So if you play multi-sports, you're doing NBA or NFL, and you're looking to kind of pad that out or build out a 4, 5, 6 pick play, put Manio in there over 16.5 PRA. That one is hitting with 100% certainty. I like that number. I triple take that number and thought, wow, they made a mistake. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that number higher by the time we get to lock, but over 16.5 PRA for Manny O. Easy lock and load play. Get it in while you can. All right, let's take a look at some bets. I wanted to look at some of the stuff here, and we're going to have the tracker filled out, and then we're going to have, like, we have the CFB betting model. Frank Brank, bet, very sharp mind that works at FTN. It's going to have the CBB model as well. So we'll have some plays from there, of course, mixed with our own. And we'll use that as a way to kind of justify and see if we're on the right wavelength, what we're looking at, if it makes sense. There are a couple of early games tomorrow, so that's going to be fun. But there was 2 that stood out. Let me just scroll down here and make sure. First day stuff. Okay, so Duquesne's versus Lipscomb. They're -5. I like that quite a bit. I think this Duquesne's team, under the good friend of LeBron James and the team that they've been able to build through the portal, is going to be very good. Lipscomb's traditionally pretty competitive, but I do like Duquesne's -5. That was one that stuck out to me as a pretty sharp look. And then let's get over to Denver versus Stanford. Denver +17.5. That one, if it drops any further, I would probably back away from. But the Stanford team's they're not going to be particularly great. And even against a team like Denver, I don't know that they blitz them by 18 plus points. So I do like Denver to cover that game and keep it within 15. Very fun game. On the DFS games, there's one between McNeese State and South Dakota State. South Dakota State 6.5 point dogs. I do like McNeese outright, and then also over 145 in that one. I think there's going to be a ton of points. McNeese, fresh off of getting smacked in the tournament, they're going to be a mid-major darling that has a lot of success. And now that they kind of know what that feels like, I think, under Coach Wade, they'll be ready for the tournament this time, and they're going to make some noise. So be on the lookout there. Texas A&M, I do like them -4 versus UCF. I'm not as high on UCF as Mike is. I get what he's going with because of the talent there. I just am not confident that they're going to be able to keep those guys from kind of falling apart there. And then Siena outright versus Brown. They're 3-point dogs, but I would take them on the money line. I think they win that one outright. All right. So that is the betting and prop stuff. Let's get a core. And then also there should be some props on. Guess not yet. DK is not offering any individual props yet. I'll check the FanDuel and Caesars in the morning to see if there's anything there. But for the most part, it looks like we're going to be getting those on Prize Picks and Underdogs for now. Core-wise for the slate, and if you play FanDuel, not a lot of people play college basketball on FanDuel anymore because of the minimal offerings. But if there's enough people that want FanDuel content like there is in college football, I will start adding that to a degree. But for the most part, we'll just focus on DraftKings. All right, so the core we're looking at here, JoJo Tugler, absolutely like in love with Tugler in this spot. The peripherals he's going to put up, if he scores at all, he's going to just put up 30. So at 3-3, he's our core play number 1. This is a tough one. Core play number 2, Mark Mitchell at 6'4". Mark Mitchell I think he's going to start off the season. So posh play of the day, aka the sneak of the slate. We're going to go with Mark Mitchell, designation number 1, slate 1, day 1. We're just going to go right into it. He's going to show out in a big way. 6'4" price is going to look laughable when it's all said and done. So JoJo Tugler, Mark Mitchell, and then one more. I think we're going to go with, as long as he starts, LeBaron Philon, 3.1. Let's just do a quick little lineup here with those 3. We'll use Mitchell at the forward spot. He's got guard forward eligibility, but anytime we got that, we'll stick him in the forward slot there. And then Tugler. So that means we have a average of 7.4K left for 5 spots with $37.2 thousand left. That is a hell of a way to start a lineup. That allows you to do some really, really nice things. A myriad of ways you can go there. Obviously, one of the pay-ups, I think you'll probably want to go with a Flag or a Dickinson. But there is a path here with the semi-balanced lineups that I always talk about, where maybe you don't pay up for one of those guys and you run a bunch of 7 to 8K guys instead and just have a very strong lineup. Gun to my head, top pay up though, from all those guys, from we'll say Bruce Thornton to Cooper Flag, I would go with Wade Taylor or RJ Davis. Pretty much where my head is at there. All right, that will do it for the first CBB Super Show of the season. A lot going on. Again, content galore, breakdowns, previews of the ACC all finalized and dropping in the morning. There will also be a Heisman update article that a lot of people have been following. We'll see there. Cam Ward, let's go. And then, of course, there will be articles for majority of the bigger slates for college basketball, and then we'll still have the main slate breakdowns for college football and a Discord coverage for all the showdowns, 2 gamers and 3 gamers that happen during the week. Projections, expect those out tomorrow afternoon, so you'll have a couple of hours to mess around with those. We'll make some edits, be up late kind of figuring those out with minutes projections. But a lot is going on. Happy Christmas Eve for all those who celebrate. Appreciate all the continued support that you guys show me. Even though it's super late on the East Coast, you guys still turn out time and time again. Take care. Appreciate it. Back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. PST this time, to break down the Tuesday slate. Let's get to the window. Let's get those green screens. Start off the slate on point. Thanks, guys.